Hi, I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. In this video, I'm going to conclude the discussion in Chapter 2 of Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. The analysis is coming from the 30th anniversary edition. This series of videos, these next subsequent videos, will conclude our discussion of Chapter 2. At this point, I've looked on the playlist link that I've provided in the PDF, and we are currently at 13 hours worth of consecutive lecture for Chapters 1 and Chapters 2. So there's 13 hours worth of video up describing Chapters 1 and Chapter 2 for Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. There are 4 chapters in total, so we're halfway there. What I'm going to do is continue the discussion and conclude the discussion in Chapter 2. The notes that I'm going to be doing today come from section 2.5 in the notes, page 20 and 21 of the notes. If you're interested in getting the notes yourself, you can download the notes. Just click the banner of the video or the description field. It'll take you to the PDF. Again, as I've said in previous videos, as I continue and I progress from Chapter 1 to Chapter 4 of Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, the PDF will get larger until I conclude the analysis. And at that point, the videos and the supplemental notes will be able to give you a pretty thorough, very comprehensive account of Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. With that said, let's begin the final section of Chapter 2. Alright, so this is Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Alright, this is Chapter 2, Section 4. Or actually 2.5, sorry. Alright. What Freire does in this last section of Chapter 2, basically from pages 81 to roughly 85 or 86, what he does in this section is he contrasts. He gives a final contrast between the 2 methods of education. The one method of education, the banking concept, which we should be very familiar with now, and the alternative to the banking concept, which he classifies as the problem-posing model of education. And what he does is he gives the benefits for the problem-posing model, and he contrasts that against the deficits or the cons for the banking concept of education. Alright, so let's look at some of the benefits of the problem-posing model. Alright. The first benefit that I have listed is the interrelation of reflection and action. Right? The interrelation of reflection and action. And the question is, well, what does that mean, the interrelation of reflection and action? Well, we recognize that reflection and action are 2 of the 3 criteria for praxis, right? So anytime we're talking about praxis for Freire, we say that praxis is made of reflection, R-E-F-L-E-C-T, reflection, dialogue, critical dialogue to be technical, and action. Right? We said that if we have only reflection without action, then we have armchair revolutionary. Right? You're an armchair revolutionary insofar as all you do is reflect but you don't act. Insofar as all you do is act but you don't reflect, there's no theory governing your action, then you're an activist, right? And he uses the term activism, an activist pejoratively, right? It's a bad thing. What we recognize is that in the form of praxis, right, and this is a praxis for liberation, in the form of praxis, there's an interrelation between reflection and action, right? So we're not talking about the idea of reflection or the idea of action as being distinct entities, right? We're talking about the idea of reflection and action, dialogue, all of this as continuously evolving, right? Continuously evolving. There is an interrelation between my reflective abilities, right? My ability to reflect on the theory that's going to inform my action and the actions that I take, right? So that when I make an action, that action is informed by theory. When I'm thinking, when I'm conceptualizing on what I need to do, that is also informed by previous actions, either by myself, my community, those that I represent, those who I wish to represent, and so on. right? So that there's a continuous interrelation of reflection and action, right? So that's one of the benefits of the problem posing model. Obviously, it's a benefit because the idea of praxis is incorporated within this liberation theory that Freire describes. The next bullet point is one of the benefits is that it's committed to education because education becomes the practice of freedom, right? And we're going to talk about this idea of the practice of freedom. Right? Education becomes the practice of freedom, and obviously this is an aspect of the problem-posing model. Right? So education becomes a practice of freedom, and this is a benefit of the problem-posing model. In a little bit, we'll see in more detail what that means, what the practice of freedom is, and also how it relates to the problem-posing model. Under the banking concept of education, however, what we recognize is that there isn't this practice of freedom, right? The practice of freedom is one of the conditions for the problem-posing model, but there's an alternative, right? And this is the practice of domination. Right? The practice of domination, and this is for the banking concept. So we have the practice of domination, which is reflected in the banking concept, and the practice of freedom, which is reflected in the problem-posing model. We'll see what the practice of domination is, and to be honest with you, it's going to be mostly recap, because at the end of chapter 2, this being the last section, if you've been following along in the videos, you know what the banking concept is. You know how it reinforces dehumanization and oppression, domination. And what we'll do is we'll see how this practice of freedom, this act of liberation, this liberation theory, counters the banking concept of education. The next point, the fourth bullet point, under the problem-posing model of education, education is, again, this practice of freedom, right? So under the problem-posing model of education, we can talk about this idea of the practice of freedom.